Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and this is Just Thinking. Welcome to our annual series of interviews of candidates for local government offices. The town election is May 20th. We have contests for select board between a challenger and an incumbent. For park commission, we have 4 candidates for 2 open seats. For school committee, we have 4 candidates for 2 seats with 1 incumbent. And for library trustees, we have 4 candidates for 2 seats. 2 candidates are incumbents, but 1 incumbent declined to be interviewed. That was an incumbent for the library. I am interviewing all these candidates. I have prepared specific questions for each board or committee. Each candidate will respond to the same questions for that office in their interview. I ask a few different questions of incumbents to reflect their years of service. Voters can compare the candidates' responses. The interviews are done one at a time and will be posted when all the candidates for an office have been interviewed. My goal is to have the videos run 30 minutes, except maybe longer for school committee. I had a lot of questions. The videos will be available on HCAP's website, on HCAP's YouTube channel, and on our Facebook page. Let's get started. Okay, so now it's time to interview Kristy Wiwczar. Did I do it right? Wiwczar?
You did, thank you.
There we go. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Kristy is running as an incumbent for another term on the library, so she'd be on the library trustees. So, why do you want to do another term?
Good question. So first thing is service. I do believe that it's important to be of service to the community, and if you can contribute, you do. It's not whether you should or not, you just do it. And for me, I think so much has been accomplished in this town by people who are either in an elected position or appointed position or just in a volunteer group doing something that they're passionate about. You know, I think about the rail trail and the Goodwill Park updates and renovation, and there's just so many people that make contributions. For me, the library is my contribution, my way to give back to the community and hopefully make a positive impact. I've been involved with the library for probably more than 20 years, starting with the Friends and serving in a variety of capacities, but doing a lot of fundraising, baked a lot of cakes for various One Book, One Hollistons, and then also was secretary and treasurer too before an opening came up on the trustees, and I decided to do that too because they needed somebody, so I said, yes, I'll do it. So service is very important. Also, right now, this is a very tough time for institutions like libraries and basically any place that has learning, information, knowledge, that kind of thing. So I want to make sure that we can continue to support the library, keep it a place that is accessible to everyone in the community and really provides for the community. So it's important to me.
How many years have you been on?
This would be my 3rd term.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we've had some issues, if that's the right word, having 2 library directors following a woman that was here for a long time. Leslie McDonald was, she was a star unto herself, and she just was an amazing lady, and she's a tough act to follow. So are there any lessons from those 2 hiring experiences that you're bringing in now? Is there something systemically wrong with why we haven't hung on to the 2 directors that we hired? I've heard all kinds of stuff, so let's see if we can find out what's the fact.
Yeah, so yes, kudos to Leslie. She was here for a really long time, definitely a hard act to follow. And I think anyone who followed her, it was going to be hard just because it's someone different, it's a change, so totally understand that. I think our hiring process is actually pretty sound. It is a process. There are certain things that you have to do and that we follow. But it's also a collaborative one. So we have people on the committee, we have trustees, we have a friend of the library, we have a community member or 2, the HR manager, so there's a lot of people that have input as to, you know, that part of the process. For second rounds, we also have the town manager as well. So there are a lot of different perspectives. People are asking, well, the questions are prescribed, but people are listening for different things during that process. So, you do have to come to consensus to get the right person. And one of the things that I think the committee is always looking for also is a good fit. So that's very important as well. So I think the hiring process itself is good. The reasons that the last two directors have left has primarily been the commute. So they've both had very long commutes, and when an opportunity came up that was closer to home, very hard to turn that down. If I were in their position, I'd probably do the same thing. If you can cut your commute from an hour plus to 20 minutes or 5 minutes, why wouldn't you do that? So that's really kind of been the downside. We love Derek. We loved Manny. We were sad to see him go. He was only here for a short time. They both made some really good contributions, which was great. But one of the things you mentioned is there a salary issue? Better salary can always help. Like, that's never going to be a bad thing. I do know that it's an issue across other department heads too, and that they are doing a compensation study in the fall for all department heads. So if there's a way that we can make some adjustment to that, that would certainly help. I do know for this current process that the town is committed to hiring in at least the middle range of the salary to try to attract good talent. And they've also lifted the floor on it. So we can't go above based on budget stuff, but they lifted the floor so that there is a kind of a threshold there. So as far as I know, no issues with the trustees, with the town, the library. We've been very supportive of both directors, have I think developed a good onboarding process to make them feel welcome, get them integrated into the community. So really it's just trying to keep them here. So
do you now, as you're looking at new people, new prospects, will their commute be a consideration? Can their commute be a consideration?
That would be, I'm not on the committee this year, so I can't tell you that. And in some respects, yes, but I don't think that that's something that we could really consider. Because if you think about, hiring for just your average corporate job, right? When you are having that conversation during the interview process, it's up to that individual to decide, are they willing to go with that commute or not? There are people who will commute long distances every day for that job, and they're fine with it. So I don't think that's a decision that we could necessarily make for them. That's up to them. They know what they would be getting into, so that's really for them to make that call.
Yeah. Actually, in our process, you would have had to advertise it that way. If in fact you ever wanted to do something like that, you'd have to put it into the advertisement, from a public process standpoint. But so you are one of 6 people. Everybody's equal in authority, and you already know this from having been on there. And you're going to need support from everybody, or support from others if you want to do something. Is there an initiative or program, process, or such in which you personally played a leadership role? What was your participation? What specifically did you do? Why that issue in particular?
Sure. As you mentioned, we have 6 trustees. We are a very collegial group, I have to say.
That's good.
It's great to work with other people who also put the library as the priority, and we're really all trying to do the best thing for the library, for the staff, for the town. And we are all very respectful of each other. We listen to each other. We want to make sure all ideas are heard. Because we do bring different perspectives, which is I think very helpful. We've got people with library experience. We've got people who have deep ties to the town and who have served on many other boards too, which is really useful. So that's very helpful, I think. This was my first year as chair, so this was a very interesting year. So starting from June of last year, I was chair. Before that, I was vice chair. And one of the things that I have done was I did serve on the last 2 committees for the hiring committees to bring on both Derek and Manny. So that was, again, very interesting experience. Got to work with a few people in town that I haven't worked with before, which was really nice. And again, kind of develop some of those additional relationships, which is good. The other thing that I've been doing as chair was to kind of reinstitute some more connections with the Friends of the Library too. Back when I was on the Friends, we always had a trustee or 2 at our meetings to just kind of make sure the communication was there, which I thought was really helpful. So we kind of put that back in place where we have someone on the trustees going to their meetings, and usually the president of the Friends attends ours too. So just so we're more aware of what's going on, if we have any questions or anything like that. So I think that the extra communication is helpful.
Let's just take a second to explain what the Friends is and how they relate to the library.
Yeah, so the Friends is really the sort of the fundraising arm and the financial support for things like programming, for museum passes, for other things that aren't covered by the town budget. So big plug for the Friends. If you are not a friend, please join, please donate. It's very helpful because they also sponsor pretty much all of the programming. So it's really important. If you like the programs, if you attend the programs, they can really, they support all of those. So.
And you can find information on the website, the town's website for the library, so that you can sign up.
Yep.
Okay.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great group, it really is.
Yes.
What do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges ahead?
So if you'd asked me this question probably 3 months ago, my answer probably would have been a little bit different.
Okay.
On the local level, I would say space, and this is kind of a recurring theme because the town, I think, is bigger than we all think it is sometimes. So we, as you probably know, we submitted the submission for the construction grant back in, I think it was May of last year is when we put that in. And we found out in January that we did not get the grant. So we were disappointed, not, I think, a huge surprise. There were a lot of applicants, a lot of other communities that kind of had greater needs. So we did not get it. We expect that there's going to be a grant round again in 2 to 3 years, we hope. Maybe, maybe not at this point. It's really kind of hard to tell.
Is that state or federal money?
That is state money.
Okay.
Yeah, however, the people who administer it are federally funded.
Okay.
So that's kind of the issue.
Yeah.
But again, ideally, we will, prepare a submission for the next grant round, whenever that is, and hopefully it'll be a stronger application. So space, I think, is one of the issues, which I'll get into more. Sort of on the national level, though, the big concern here is all the administration's efforts to cut funding. So you probably heard about the IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Sciences. So they provide $3.6 million to the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and those programs are the ones that are in jeopardy. In particular, funding for positions that administer things like the state aid and the grants and other MBLC positions. So that's problematic. There's also the potential for it to impact the interlibrary loan lending and potentially summer reading. And there was one other thing that I can't remember. Yeah, but there are cuts that are potentially going to have a big impact. And NPR just had an article on this yesterday, and the rural libraries, I think, and super small libraries are really going to be impacted very, very heavily. We are kind of lucky in that we have a lot of support. We have a lot of state support too, but we're not going to be out of danger here either.
Right.
So.
I mean, obviously, we can go to Framingham. We can get around to go to a different library, but the circulation with other communities, I would hate to see anything disturb that, because for people who aren't mobile or whatever, any number of reasons, you know, I just think that's been such a boon. Such a boon.
Databases was the other thing that they fund too. And if anybody's interested, the library website actually has a lot of information on there, as well as links. And there are links to basically scripts that you can use to call your senators and reps and stuff too. So I've already made my phone calls. Okay,
it's a good reminder, because I do believe that they listen. Of course, we have a unique situation where, you know, we're sort of on the outside right now. The administration's not fond of Massachusetts, and there are a lot of things that I've seen that I've thought, well, you know, like there was one for a grant that was being used by Chelsea and Malden for water in flooding whole parts of their cities, you know, and that got pulled, and I thought, well, that's kind of short-sighted, because you know it's going to flood again, and so then what? You know, the reality is somebody's going to, anyway.
Well, the other thing here is that the IMLS budget is such a small piece of the federal budget. It's really pretty tiny compared to everything else out there. And it impacts just such a wide segment of the population.
Yeah.
So it's not like, it's a niche group that is being affected. It's very large populations, and particularly, again, populations in more rural areas too, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, yeah. So what are the priorities for the library over the next 3 years besides coping with budget issues? I mean, that's kind of a chronic one.
Yeah, well, first is obviously hire the new director and make sure they stay, and also just make sure they're getting incorporated into the community as sort of quickly and smoothly as possible. I think Manny was already starting to make connections and reach out to people, which was really good. So just to kind of continue that effort, make sure they're feeling welcomed, and we really support them. Second, again, is space. I think we need to really be thinking creatively about the space that we have. The staff has already been doing that. I'm sure people have been in the library, noticed things are moved around. When Derek was here, they switched the circulation desk to the opposite side, got a new desk, which was great. And the staff have been moving some of the shelving around. Some of the shelving is on casters now too, which is great, so you can move stuff. And they've been sort of flipping around where the travel is and where the books on tape and a few of those things. So I think we need to continue kind of thinking about how can we use the space that we have, and how can we try to sort of expand it, maximize it. So that's going to be a big one. And then again, just minimize the impacts on the current administration and see what we can do to make sure that not only do we, not lose funding, but that there aren't other negative impacts on the library.
So there are lots and lots of people who can or do use the library. What is your constituency?
I'd say just everybody. I mean, everybody in the town. We really want as many people using the library as possible. It's a public resource. It's there for the town residents. If there's a program you want to see, or if there's something else, you want to see in the library, then by all means reach out. The staff is open to suggestions. The Friends are open to programming ideas. The more residents we can get, using the library, then we feel like that's a successful library.
People should be aware that you have changed things in the lower level so that there is a meeting space, and that meeting space has access to technology, so you can do Zoom meetings in there, which I did recently myself for some committee or other. But that's relatively new. It's not brand new, but it's relatively new, and certainly the internet connection is really helpful because that isn't available everywhere, for evening meetings especially. So we've talked about space. There's certainly been talk about building a new library. Let's just talk about that. So there's the space issue. What do you think about all of this? What would you like to see?
So I will start with the building a new or renovation. So I'm agnostic as to, do we want to build a new library? Do we want to renovate? A construction grant could cover either one. So that it's a matter of getting the experts in to see what's going to be the best thing for the library, what makes the most sense. We did a space study a few years ago, and the feedback we have gotten there, and also repeatedly, is people love having the downtown location. It's very convenient. It's lovely. It's great. People also complain about the parking. Like, there's the two of those that just kind of contrast each other, and we don't have a lot of parking. So people would love to have more parking. With the building in the same space, that would be great. I'm not sure that that's possible. That's something that we would need to study. So again, agnostic as to build new or move somewhere else, or rather renovate. There's not much space that we can work with on that lot because we have neighbors. So again, I'd leave that up to the experts. But I do think we've outgrown the space. We just passed the 15,000 population threshold, which for the Minuteman Network, that has meaning to it. And so we're not quite the small town that everybody, I think, thinks we are. We're not quite that small. So we do need to do that. And just a couple of programs that the library hosted recently. So there was the cello concert by Diverse Holliston, which I went to, which was lovely. That was in the main space by the circulation desk. And the tables were moved out, and we had some chairs in there, which was great. But the computer desks are right there, and you can't really move those because I think they're hardwired into the floor. So that's kind of the limitation on that, and you can't really maneuver around it. We had some people in the balcony, which was nice. But to be able to have a larger space would be great. The flute concert that was back in the fall had over 60 people, and that was downstairs. I believe it was in the Gilman room. So clearly, there's a need for larger, bigger program space, and it would be nice to be able to have something that had some flexibility. You mentioned we have the meeting space that's kind of in past the water fountain there. That's a great meeting space. It'd be nice to have more things like that, where you have smaller rooms, maybe for tutoring or study sessions or something like that. That would be great to have too. I've seen that in a few other libraries, and I don't know, I'm kind of a library nerd, so whenever I go traveling, I visit other libraries, and I'm like, well, what do they have? And it's really interesting to see what's out there.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of library study spots upstairs, single spaces where you could, and I used to use it. But, as time evolved, we just didn't have the floor space to give up to that and had to do other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's in a tight corner there, a tight space there, and the town didn't take advantage of the opportunity to buy the bank next door that houses the dentist now.
In retrospect, that was a deal.
That was quite the bargain, if we, and we might have known it would be, hindsight's always 20/20.
Right.
Anyway, so now that technology has so disrupted the world of books, what role does the library play, and describe your ideal library for Holliston?
Sure. So I think the library is still very much a book-centric place. I don't think books are going away. The nice part about technology now is that you're not dealing with just physical books, so that does kind of decrease some of the pressure on the physical space, so that's a plus. But you've also got your electronic books, you've got your audio books, which also makes the library more accessible to people too, so you don't have to actually come in if that's not possible for you. They've also got the hotspots. They've got the programming for like the virtual book talks, the author talks, the book clubs. Like I see the library as not just a place of learning and engagement, but also the community space for these events, the flute concerts, the cello concerts, the plant swap. There was a plant swap back in the fall. I think it was the fall, and people put in plant clippings, and you could take plant clippings, things like that. I think anything that really kind of brings people together. I still feel like people are recovering after COVID, and still feeling kind of isolated and a little bit, I don't want to say socially inept, but just kind of cautious. And it's just nice to have reasons to bring people together again, and I could see the library kind of serving as that sort of third space. So yeah. One of the
issues that faces libraries across the country is the issue of banning books. And I had an interesting comment with Manny. He had some experience with it down in Tennessee. And I think that you ended up creating a policy about book banning, or one was underway or something, but whatever, I may be wrong. But so there was a display in the library of books that had been banned elsewhere. Did you folks, were the trustees involved in that decision? Did you have a voice in that decision?
So I'll get back to the book collection policy, so just make sure I don't forget that. So the banned books display was a display like pretty much all the rest of the displays are. So we have, the librarians will put up a display for like Black History Month or Women's Month, or Women's History Month, or any other grouping that they choose. And so we don't necessarily get informed of that, which is fine. This is, they're the professionals. We leave it up to their judgment. So we didn't have advance notice of that, which is fine. We don't need
that. Was a normal process.
Normal process, exactly. So it was, a display like any other display. Personally, I was fine with it. I had no issues with having that display up. The whole idea is to engage with people and give them something to think about. So if you don't want to read any of those books, that's perfectly fine. Somebody else may enjoy them. So.
Well, some of us had many of those books as required reading when we were growing up. So I remember walking by the pile and it was like, really? They're giving you an option? Because that was required reading, whether it was Grapes of Wrath or,
And I looked at another list of banned books recently. It's a top 100, I think, from like PBS or something. And, two of them that were on there are by a couple of my favorite authors and were, I thought, just exceptionally good books. So I was like, why? But
yeah, our book group, I belong to the Alden book group. We did one session on banned books, and as part of that, I did a lot of research on other places. And there's sort of categories of why people choose to ban them. And I came to the conclusion that very often it wasn't just the why, and the why was usually either sex, gender issues, violence, those kinds of things. It wasn't necessarily the issues themselves, but when the book was introduced, that is what age group. And I think that's one of the things that I've missed, at least in the conversations I've heard. But anyway, it's just a thing that I came across.
Going back to the book collection policy, though, yes, we do have a policy. It is on, just like all the rest of the policies, it's on the library website for the book collection and basically how the books are added to the collection or removed. They do a normal weeding process. The librarians do periodically to get books out of the collection. But there's also a process where if you do have an objection to a book, you can fill out a form, it gets reviewed by the director, and there's a whole process associated with that. So, yeah,
I think that's important for people to realize that exists.
Yeah, it does. There's a process, and it's there.
Another similar situation that was a little bit controversial was the Drag Queen Story Hour event for children at the library. And how did you feel about that program?
Yeah, so that was June of last year, and that was sponsored by Diverse Holliston, and it actually attracted a capacity crowd. So apparently that's a program that a lot of patrons wanted to attend. So I'm happy that the library could offer that. And it says on our library website, the library is intended to be a safe space for all individuals and all our patrons. So we do try to keep diversity, inclusion, visibility available through all the library services, including programming, including the book collection, and everything else. So it should be a place where everybody feels comfortable. So I know we had talked with Derek about potentially doing a second one, but just didn't get to that point. So.
And as I understand it, all went well. There was absolutely nothing of any disturbance and so forth. I think that there was that. I think it was criticized before the fact.
Yes, yeah, there was
which is like anticipating trouble when there wasn't any trouble.
Yeah, there was some issues beforehand, communications, but there was no issues the day of the event, no problems. It seemed like a really good crowd. I wasn't there, unfortunately. I was out of the country at the time, but it seemed like it went very well, and everybody was happy to be there.
Good. So, good. Yeah. So these are the fun questions. I have to assume you're a reader, because why would you be involved in the library if you weren't? But anyway, what are you reading now? What's your favorite book, favorite genre?
So I was reading The Bee Sting until I got to about the last 20 pages, and it wasn't going well, so I had to put that aside. And I think that may have been one of the books on one of the displays that the librarians put together, which was books we didn't like, which I thought was a genius display. So I'm going to pick that one back up again and finish it, so no spoilers from anybody out there. And in the meantime, I read A Year of Living Constitutionally by journalist A.J. Jacobs, who basically took 1 year and tried to live by the Constitution in New York City. So pretty interesting. Very funny in parts. There was a lot of baking of election cakes in there too, so I support that. So I generally will alternate between fiction and nonfiction, and we'll do kind of a wide variety of nonfiction. The only thing I don't read is horror, but my husband does, so we have that in the house anyway. Yeah. Okay. But I will say I did reread one book recently, which I don't normally do because there's too many other good things out there. It's called Rowing to Latitude, and it's by a woman who used to be a snow and avalanche expert in Alaska. And she and her husband would row. She has an ocean-going scull, and he has an ocean-going kayak in various Arctic climates, like around Alaska and Norway and Greenland and places like that. Right, for like weeks and weeks at a time, basically living out of their boat and camping. And this was back in like the early 2000s, I think the book came out. So not stuff you could necessarily do now, before cell phones too. So there was a lot of isolation there, but fascinating story and super interesting. Just like travelogue, risk analysis, climate change, like all of that's included there. So highly recommend. I'm trying to bump up her Amazon ratings.
I see. Okay. Well, it does bring a new definition of isolation.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, can give you 2 minutes now if you'd like to do your little 2-minute
Pitch.
promo for yourself. Okay. You
Sure.
can look at the camera and have at it. And,
Okay.
okay.
I probably won't take all 2 minutes, but
That's fine. Take
as I
whatever you need.
mentioned, as I mentioned at the beginning, I do believe in being of service to the community and trying to have a positive impact, and in whatever form that takes for you. For me, that means supporting the library and being a trustee, being there for the patrons, the staff, and the other trustees. I do believe in the power of the library. As I mentioned, I am a big reader. And a book is a wonderful thing. So the library, just having that collection to me is a place for learning, for exploration, and for connection too. So I would very much like to continue to work on behalf of the residents and on behalf of the library. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I've always thought we could use a little coffee shop in the back corner where that library table is.
That was also suggested in one of the space study surveys.
Seriously. I may have thrown that one in any time I had the chance.
Yep.
Anyway, okay, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Just Thinking. You've done your homework. Now please remember to vote on May 20th. It's important for you, your family, and our community. Thank you.